When we look at the world of strategy, the very, very big picture today, there are 5 key issues that we're seeing. So on a very, very high level worldview of strategy. Item number 1, business models are getting broken faster. Kodak is a classic example. Microsoft is a very current example. And one of the things that some of you mentioned with Statoil is actually the same thing, where we're looking at on an industry level, what is happening to the industry level business model for oil and gas. Secondly, the lifetime of large companies, big companies, is getting shorter and shorter. Simply put, large firms are dying faster. And very interesting research done on this by the Innovate team in Boston. At the same time, the speed and complexity of more or less everything is increasing. It's the result of globalization and digitization. And the sum of this is change faster. Now, to handle this, several companies are learning to cycle through business models. It is in the field of strategy a fairly new term, but it basically means leave your old business, invent new business, but at an extremely faster pace. And we're going to teach you this afternoon. What does it mean for your company to cycle through business models faster? And finally, disruption, which in its beginning was seen as a rare event. Disruption, meaning disruptive innovation, disruptive business model, disruptive technology, is happening faster and is really becoming the new normal. And virtually every single industry that we're looking at today are either exposed in the process or soon to be facing disruption. So those 5 big trends. Yet most companies operate strategy as a linear plan, maybe a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, or even a 10-year plan. But what we're seeing is the need to introduce a whole new way of thinking around strategy, where you look at strategy as a portfolio of competing business models at the same time. And for instance, a company like Statoil frequently say our business model in the singular, but reality is Statoil has a large portfolio of business models, but we're not really addressing it as such. Even small companies, even a company like Communicator 365, how many employees do you have technically? 10. If you were to look at that company, you would see that it's not one single, or at least it shouldn't be one single business model. It should actually be a portfolio. And we're going to teach you this mechanism a little bit later today. It is pretty fascinating once you get it. Change versus the current paradigm. Every single company has what we call a dominant logic. Now, a dominant logic is, this is how our business is run, this is how our industry is run, this is how things are done, this is how things will be getting done in the future. And this dominant logic, it seeps into culture, it seeps into management processes, it seeps into recruiting, it seeps into every aspect of the business. Very few companies have learned really how to do what we call strategic transformation, to master the art of transforming and transforming and transforming again. But companies that are going to grow big and survive will need to have this skill on a very high level. Now, the big problem is chess. Anybody play chess? So you know, how many pieces do you have in chess? This is pretty easy. This is one of those. You have 32 pieces. And how many squares do you have? I'll help you along. It's 64. You all knew that. I know that. Now, chess, they have certain rules. For instance, in chess, you're not allowed to airdrop a cluster of pieces like that and just wipe out the opposing team. You can't do it. Furthermore, you're not allowed, if you look this way, to attack from the rear, where you'll actually leave the table, go underneath it, and attack like this. You're not allowed. It's not how chess is played. Furthermore, you're not allowed to play with an elephant, because chess doesn't have elephants. You're not allowed to play with penguins, even though it says bite me penguins, because it's not allowed. And finally, this cute little bird It doesn't belong here. It's not how chess is played. Try it during one of the breaks, it's pretty cool. What happens is that most companies take the rules of chess or the rules of the industry or what we call the industry norms as given. That's how things are done. That's how things should be done. Again, the car industry was very specific that there's really no market for electric cars. The technology isn't there. It's ugly and nobody wants it. Oops. We are introducing a different view on strategy. Strategy is a very different process, much more fluid. Rules are to be bent or broken. Industry norms are to be challenged or changed or proven differently. A small company from a village called Stavanger can actually do a Mars mission because it's really not that difficult when you just figure out how to do it. A small oil and gas company from Norway can actually grow into one of the largest and most innovative technology companies in the world if they choose to do so. If you take a different perspective on strategy. Now, if we bring this into a very brief table, it's the same as on the wall over here. On one side, you have strategy as analysis. It's what most of us are taught in school. Strategy as analysis focuses on strategy is the analytical, logic, and linear process, where you very often do cash flow analysis well into the future, assuming a stable environment, which you know is not really true, but that's what they teach you. You expect the future to be stable, expect the future to be very much like the present, and you expect the business environment to be very rational. It is very often not. And you use the old classic tools like the SWOT and the PASTEL and the 5 forces, because that's the tools that you have been trained in. What we are working with is what we call strategy as innovation. In this perspective, strategy is fundamentally a creative exercise. It's a disruptive exercise, and you're trying to think, how can we be very different, extremely different from what everybody else is doing? It requires different tools, it requires different mindsets. And as we progress today, and we look at this company, you'll see over and over again that they have all the building blocks, if you will, of strategy as innovation. And when we have small startups, slightly bigger companies, or slightly bigger companies still, I really want to invite you today to how can you move more to the strategy as innovation side. This is fantastically covered in this book. Anybody read it yet? 1, 2, 3. Oh, music. The rest of you will during the day. It was recently named the Strategy Book of the Year. And Rita, who wrote it, starts with this story. Now, why is it that these two companies who both used to make film for camera, we all know this, one had 123,000 employees, that's around 5 times the size of Statoil, so it was like a medium-sized company. And the other one had about 70,000. The big one, gone. The small one, wildly successful in very different fields. If you dig to the essence of that story, you find that management at Kodak refused to accept change, period. That's simple. And we do it slightly more complex in the book, but that's the very essence. Fuji had the confidence in gambling with new business areas while they still were successful in the old. Look at a company like Nordan, or Viking, or maybe even Statoil. How much are we gambling in developing new business areas, wildly new business, like going to Mars, while we also maintain and decline the old? It's the essence of the end of competitive advantage. Assumption number 1, your core business will die faster. It might be an Indian IT company. It might be a Chinese manufacturer. It might be a Polish manufacturer. It might be a Brazilian oil and gas company that comes into Norway and buys up most of your business. Are we making innovation a core skill? Most companies, no. But I'm super thrilled to have several of the people from Statoil's innovation team here, because you probably have one of the most important jobs in all of Norway. Constant change and morphing. Most companies' cultures are alien to change at a fundamental level. How easy is it for us to morph into new business areas? And finally, Do we have strategy as a linear plan, or do we have strategy as a portfolio of options? That is the very essence. Now, the challenge for most companies, we discussed it slightly earlier, is this. The average employee and most managers, they do not know or understand the company's strategy. Management team will do it, they will present it, and that's very often where it stops. The whole translating into action becomes very difficult. Research by Kaplan and Norton says around 80 to 95% of the average employee, they do not understand company strategy. And then there's one guy, super engaged, super thrilled, and he runs off, and everybody else go, yeah. Fantastic article written in 2008, where they interviewed a number of senior executives asking one question. In 35 words or less, can you say what your company's strategy is? And what do you think most did? Too many words, wrong answers, and my favorite, I have to look it up first. 2009, this fantastic book came out, and a lot of movements started happening, especially in Europe, around designing visual business models. Now, I know many of you have worked with the business model canvas, and it's a fantastic tool, and it's really started a movement, and Holger has worked extensively with this movement in designing more visual strategies and more visual business. 2010, fantastic book by David Sibbett on visual meetings. 2011, Dan Rome writes probably his best book so far. It says Blah, 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 where most management teams, they kill energy, kill strategy, kill ideation, because they talk it to death. 2012, David Sibbett releases his new book, Visual Leaders. And today we have visual facilitators like Holger over here, who's traveling the world, trying to initiate, if you will, a global revolution in designing visual strategy and innovation thinking. And this is from one of his workshops in Oslo, working on the board or on the iPad, designing visual business models, designing visual strategy. It creates more creativity, and it creates more buy-in, and it creates more understanding. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the big picture, the very big high-level picture of strategy today.